Today is about analyzing deals. And when I think about this step of analyzing deals, this really is where people get tripped up the most. This is the step where people waste the most time. And this is the step that kills more first deals than anything else. It's fairly simple to generate leads. That's not the hard part here. There's tools that can do that. There's marketing channels that can do that. The hard part is this step 2, which is now I'm going to take a lead and I have to now figure out what does a good deal look like? What is a good offer price or buy price so that if I can get this deal at that number, I can go on to wholesale it and make money, right? And so what happens is we tend to overcomplicate this. And leave a comment, let me know if you overcomplicate analyzing deals. Tell me, yes, Jerry, I struggle with analysis paralysis, right? Where I get hung up on running the numbers to figure out if it's a good deal. Because I think this is probably one of the most common areas of struggle for most people when they get started. Leave a comment, let me know if that's something you've struggled with, just feeling super insecure about your number, feeling like you spend way too much time getting to the number and then still feel not very confident about the number, worried about if you're going to do it wrong because you have the wrong number when you go to a seller. If that's a concern and that's a worry you have, leave a comment and let me know. I think I see that as a very common occurrence here. It is a big area of concern that really shouldn't be. Let's really think about this. And what I'm going to do here, and guys, I've never put together a training where I explain analysis the way that I'm going to explain it today. So I really think this is going to be transformational for many of you. When we look at analyzing the deal, what really are we trying to accomplish? The analyzing of a deal is really just the process of determining a buy price that would allow you to wholesale it for a profit. That's all we're really trying to do. If we really break it down, I'm just trying to get to a number that I can make money with, right? That's really the big picture of it. But there's some misconceptions out there around our offer price, because what I want to do now is I want to take analyzing, and I want you to set that aside for a second. Why do we analyze a deal? Well, it's to get to our offer price. Well, when we get to our offer price, there's a real misunderstanding about why we make an offer in the first place. And the purpose of making an offer to a seller or an agent is not to get a deal. Now, this sounds very counterintuitive, but stay with me here. It's not to get a deal. That's not why we make an offer. We make an offer to uncover motivation. That's why. That's the only reason why we make an offer. Now, if we happen to get a deal from that offer, fantastic. But the reason why we're putting an offer in front of a seller or an agent is to find out if they're motivated. Because if they're motivated, they're going to come to the table and we're going to dance, right? We're going to maybe put a deal together. How do we know if a seller is motivated? We can go through the pillars of motivation. We're going to talk about that. We could uncover what the distress is. We could do all these different things. But at the end of the day, the only way to really know if a seller is motivated is to put an offer in front of them and see what they do, see how they respond to that. How are they going to react to my offer? That's the only real indication if a seller's motivated. It's the only and best way to find out. So with that in mind, our offer becomes less about a number and more about a mindset, more about a process. So let's talk about the offer process. The offer process is to anchor low. It's not an actual offer. It's more of a ballpark. And that low anchor number should solicit a no. The seller should say, there's no way I could pay that price. That's how we make an offer, which means when we analyze a deal, all we really need to get to is a low number that we can use as an anchor so that the seller can say, no, I can't pay that low. That's all. That's really what we're trying to do. And when you can grasp this concept I'm trying to share with you right now, analysis does not become this overwhelming, complicated process. Now, settling on a number, and is the number that we're going to agree on and go under contract at, does that number need to be dialed in? Sure, that number needs to be dialed in. But that's a different situation than just making an offer, coming up with a number to make an offer, which is going to be 99% of what we do. 99% of what we do is not the actual deal, it's the offer. So again, what I'm trying to get to here is we need to make the analysis process way less complicated. We need to make it way faster, way more simple. And we need to make it all about soliciting a no a low anchor, and not even an actual offer. When I say it's not an actual offer, what I mean by that is we're going to say something to the effect of, in the perfect world, I would be around 100,000. Now that's not an actual offer. I did not say the highest I can pay is 100,000. I said, if I had my way, I would love to be around 100,000. Now 100,000 isn't my eventual number. It's just a ballpark number. So when we say in the perfect world, I would be around 100,000, what the seller's probably going to say, if we did our anchor correctly, is the seller's going to say, there's no way I can go that low. We just solicited a no. That's the intent. We want that. If they say, you know what, I'll take it, you probably didn't anchor low enough. So then how do we respond to that? We respond by saying, yeah, I get it. That's in the perfect world, I'd be at 100,000. But how close can you get to that price? Now, what did we just do? Now we're going to uncover the real motivation. If they say, you know, I really was hoping to get 270, but I could probably come down to 150, you know, or whatever. I just made that up. But see, what we're doing now is we're actually getting to the real number that a seller will take. How? Anchoring low, soliciting a no, it's not a real offer, and getting them down to see what their bottom line is. That's really what the offer process looks like. Now, it doesn't mean whatever number they say is a deal yet, but what it means is when I've got to come up with a number to put in front of a seller, I need to make that a whole lot less accurate than it needs to be. It doesn't need to be very accurate. Most of the time, I don't look at comps. I don't do ARV. I don't look at repairs, none of that. And I'm going to show you how to do this in a very simple way. What it really comes down to, guys, is it's about the timing. It's all about the timing. Initially, our initial low anchor price is not about accuracy. It's just needs to be low enough. That's it. It's just there to uncover motivation. That's all we need to get to. So if that's the case, then we can get there very simple, very easy way to get there. Now later, when it's time to sign a contract, okay, you know what? We're about to sign this contract for 110,000. Now it's the right time for me to do some due diligence. Maybe even after I sign the contract. A lot of times, guys, I'll sign a contract, I'll have due diligence in my contract, and then I'll really determine if I've got a good number. I'll really comp it. I'll drive comps. I'll get quotes on repairs. I'll really dig into the deal to see if I've got a good deal. But that's later when it's the right time. Okay, you guys following me with this? Leave a comment and say, Jerry, this is sinking in. I'm understanding analysis a whole lot differently. So leave that comment. Let me know if this is making sense to you, if you're grasping this idea around analysis. Okay, so then if that's the case, what is our buy formula? If we really dumb it down, if we really simplify it, our buy formula is this. What will a cash buyer pay in the marketplace for this deal, less my wholesale fee I want to make on the deal, equals my offer? That equals my max allowable offer, my MAO. That's our formula. What will a buyer pay in the market for this deal, less my fee? That's my buy price. So if that's the case, what we really need to do is understand, well, what do cash buyers pay for deals like this? What will a cash buyer in my market pay for this particular deal that I've got in hand? And when you can start to put yourself in the cash buyer's shoes and look at it from their perspective and understand how they look at deals and understand what makes sense for a buyer, now you start to do the analysis a whole lot better. And this varies, right? This is going to vary market to market, price point to price point. Your job is to understand what buyers pay for deals like this, whatever deal you're looking at in your market. What's the buy price look like for a buyer? When a buyer is looking at a deal and you're going to put yourself in their shoes, and this would be you if you're the buyer, what do you have to do? Well, first thing you have to do is establish value. I got to know what this property's worth. That's my starting point. I'm going to figure out value. Then I've got to figure out, well, what are my soft costs? And soft costs to me are closing fees, paying commissions when you resell, financing to fund the deal, and your profit. Those four things: closing fees, commissions, financing, and profit. Lump that all together into what we call soft costs. This is a number you have to take right off the top on any deal that you have to factor for. And again, I'm talking about the cash buyer who's going to end up doing the deal. Well, then they have to figure out, okay, well, I've got soft costs to do the deal. Well, I also got to spend some money probably to fix it up. If I'm going to rent it or flip it, I got to spend some money on it probably. What does that number look like? So I got to understand that number. Then if you're the wholesaler, there's those numbers that the buyer factors in. Plus I got to figure out what I want to make on the deal. I got to factor that into the numbers. Then I just do some math and figure out, well, what does that take me down to on a buy price, right? Like this is really a simplified version of getting to the bottom line number of what you should be paying for a deal. So let's talk about value now, because I just said first thing you have to do is establish value. There are two different values of a property. The first value is what we call after repair value, or ARV. Now in our world, this is a very common term. We use it all the time. It's going to become a go-to term for you. Other people outside of wholesaling and flipping, they don't know what this means, so don't use it with the wrong audience. Like I never say ARV with agents because I don't know if they understand our lingo because they're agents, right? I don't ever say ARV to sellers. They don't know what after repair value is. That's a thing we use. But after repair value is the future value of a property. And it's the future value assuming that it gets fixed up to market standards. So what will this property be worth at some point in the future, assuming that it gets renovated? That number is what a flipper wants to know. This is a flipper's number. A flipper wants to know, if I buy this, fix it up, and I resell it, what will I resell it for? Now, how do you figure that out? Well, you have to look at similar homes in the same neighborhood that have recently sold. So other flip properties in the same neighborhood or area that are recent, like 6 months, okay? That's how you figure out the ARV, because if similar properties that are just like yours or close to yours in the same area, so it's going to draw the same type of buyer and are recent, that's how I'm going to figure out what my value is, my ARV value. Well, ARV is only one way to determine value. There's another value, which is the current value. What's it worth right now as it sits? What's the as is current value of this property? And again, how do we know that? Well, we're going to base it as well on similar condition homes that recently sold in the area. Not ARV comps, not fixed up homes, but other homes that are similar condition. And that's going to vary because it could be hit really bad. It could need a lot of work, or it could be what I call livable or move-in ready, meaning it's just sort of dated, like the kitchen's functional and works. It's just old. You know, like that would be a livable condition home, or it could be gutted down to the studs and it needs a complete redo all the way from start to finish. But what is the current value of that home based on similar homes in the same neighborhood that have recently sold? Now, both of those give us a different value when we're looking at a property, and both of those are important to understand. Okay, so I want to bring this to your awareness now. So let's talk about the formula. So if it's an ARV, if you're looking at the ARV value or formula, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take that ARV value, we're going to take out our soft cost. Now that varies because everybody's got a little bit different version of what soft costs are. But again, what are soft costs? Soft costs, again, are closing fees, commissions, financing, and profit. Those are all things that have to be factored into a deal for a flipper to consider. Those are all things that they have to factor that are going to go into every deal they do. They're going to have to pay closing fees when they buy it and when they resell it. They're going to have to pay commissions when they resell it. They're probably going to have funding or financing costs because they're going to borrow money to do the deal. And they're going to want to make a profit on the deal. Then once they've figured out their soft costs, in this case on the screen here, 25% to cover soft costs, then they're going to have to figure out, okay, well, now I got to spend money on repairs. So what's that number look like? Then I got to pay a wholesale fee. So what's that number look like? And then that equals my buy price. Okay, well, that's the wholesale formula, right? I got to back out of my wholesale fee to get to my buy price. Now that, again, I underlined 75% because it might be 70%, it might be 80%, it might be 65%. Everybody's going to have a slightly different formula. What I'm finding in most markets right now is most flippers are between 70 and 75. Now that's as of today. That could vary, that could change. If it's a really hot market, then that could go up to 80. During the height of the market, just a few years ago, like at the height of COVID, I was seeing 82, 85%. So very small margins on deals. Back when I first got started during the market crash of 2007, we were at 60 to 65%. Why? The market crashed, a lot more risk. You needed bigger margins to do deals. Okay, you had to factor that in. So around 70 to 70% is pretty consistent. But again, how do we know the real number? You have to learn the real number in your market. But as a ballpark, it's probably around 70 to 75%. Okay, what about the as-is formula? Well, as-is formula is going to take that current as-is value. You're going to take some discount off of that, minus your wholesale fee equals your buy price. It's a different formula to determine what is my buy number on an as-is value basis. Now, between the two of these, which one's more complicated? Which one's harder? Well, it's going to be ARV. That's more difficult for two main reasons. One, you got to figure out the ARV, which is looking at only renovated comps in the same neighborhood. Sometimes you have enough comps, sometimes you don't. You really got to understand what they did to the property. You're going to have to look at different types of rehabs to get to that number and be accurate about it. And you got to also understand repairs. Well, what needs spent on this house to get it to look like that ARV house? What does new kitchens cost, and new countertops and new floors and paint and repairs and all the things, roofs and windows and everything? You got to somehow start to understand repairs in order to do an ARV formula. Now, again, we can simplify this somewhat. We can ballpark this somewhat. We can learn how to comp properties. All of those are good skills. At some point in time, understanding ARV is a really, really valuable skill. But for now, to start off, the as-is formula is pretty easy. There's no comping and no repairs to get to the as-is formula. It's a faster way to get to your offer price. So what I want to do is I want to introduce this idea to you of a faster, easier way to get to your offer price using an as-is formula and not an ARV formula. I created this calculator not too long ago. Maybe some of you are using this or have seen this. But what this does, it's an as-is calculation, and it really simplifies how to do this. And go to Free Offer Calculator, guys. You could go there and opt in and download it, put your email in and download it. And there's built-in formulas that I'm going to show you here in a second. But to do this calculator, you really only need to input 3 data points, and you don't have to have any analysis whatsoever to do it. That's what's cool about this. So what I want to do is I want to take a minute and show you this. What we're going to do is we're going to go grab the as-is values from 3 different places. Zillow, which calls it a Zestimate, Redfin, which calls it Redfin Estimate, and Realtor.com, which calls it Real Estimate. Now, these 3 big juggernaut sites have invested millions of dollars in creating an algorithm to value a property. And what's crazy is in the past, like years ago when Zillow came out with their Zestimate number, nobody had any faith in it. Like it was just way off. Now, these companies have gotten so good at the data that they're very accurate. In fact, they've gone back and done post-analysis on their numbers. And in most markets, they're like within 5 to 10% of the actual value. So they're very accurate on what the current value is of those properties. That's how good they've gotten. And we can have a lot of certainty in the numbers that they're coming up with. Now, to be safe, we're not just going to go off of one of them. Like we're not just going to look at Zillow. If we just look at Zillow's estimated value, we're at risk there because we're just looking at one data point. What we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 different data points from 3 different sites, Zillow, Redfin, and Realtor.com. And we're going to gather their value that they're giving the property. I'm going to show you how to do this. And then we're going to average them. That's going to give us a very, very safe as-is value for any property that we're looking at. So how's this look? Let's take an example. And this is a property that I pulled the other day when I was building my slides. But if you go into Zillow with that address, Zillow says that the Zestimate is $214,600. Okay. So right now, as of this recording, Zillow is saying, we think this property has a value as it sits for $214,600. Now, where did they get that number? Through their fancy algorithm of looking at thousands of different data points to come up with that number. They actually, if you look at the box next to it, they have a range from 204 to 225. So they're sort of saying, hey, we could be off a little bit. It could fall in this range, but here's our average of that, or our estimate, our best estimate guess is 214,600. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that number and we're going to go into our offer calculator and we're going to input the Zillow value of 214,600. So if you guys have this calculator pulled up, if you download it and you have it up, you'll see right there is where you would put that Zillow number of 214,600. Okay, you with me so far? Guys, leave a comment and tell me, yes, Jerry, I've got the calculator. I'm following along. If you don't have it up right now, that's fine. Just watch what I'm doing and then go back and rewatch this with the calculator and make sure you understand how to input the values, right? It's pretty simple though. You're going to take that Zillow number. We're going to put it in this box right here where you see that red arrow. Okay, well, we don't want to, again, just go off of Zillow. We could, but that wouldn't give us as much confidence as if we looked at other data points. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take that same address and we're going to go over to Redfin. Well, Redfin says that that property has a as-is value of $219,735. Again, where the heck are they coming up with that number? That's how they're running their algorithm to give it a value. So $219,735, we're going to take that number and we're going to go over to our calculator and we're going to put $219,735 as our Redfin number. Now we got two data points. We got Zillow at $214,600. We got Redfin at $219,735. Now, what I like about this is there's some consistency there, right? Both those sites are coming up with a very similar number on value. Okay, now let's go to Realtor.com. And Realtor.com was a little interesting. And again, they call that the real estimate. And Realtor.com actually shows 2 to 3. Sometimes they'll show you 3 different data points. And this one is Quantarium and CoreLogic. So Real Estimate actually says, well, we're going to show you a couple different data points. We're going to show you one at 246,110, and then we're going to show you CoreLogic at 257,913. Both these different numbers on Realtor.com give a much higher number. So what I like to do is just take the average of those two. So if I take the average of 246 and 257, then that's going to give me 252. So I just plug in the middle ground of whatever the numbers are on Realtor.com. So I put right here on Realtor.com 252. Now that's a little bit of an outlier. So you could see there that the other two came in really close at 214 and 219. Realtor.com came in at 252. But what I like about Realtor.com is we're really looking at 4 data points because Realtor.com showed us 2 different ones that they use. So we're really averaging now 4, right? And so if I look at this next box here, 228,778 is the average of those 4 different data points we looked at. So when we look at this property on 104 Danforth Street, what we're saying, hey, between all of these juggernaut sites that invest millions of dollars in their algorithms to come up with value, we can take a safe bet that this thing's around 228,000 in value as it sits in current value. By the way, the green cells that you see here in green, those are formulas. So be careful not to override those. If you override those, hit your back button or, reopen a new spreadsheet because you'll mess up all your formulas if you override it. You can override it. You can type right over the top of it, but those green cells are formulas. Okay, so stay with me, guys. What we just did here was we took 5 minutes, if that. We looked up the address on each of those 3 sites, Zillow, Realtor.com, and Redfin. We took the estimated value that they're giving it. We input it into our spreadsheet here. And then the spreadsheet does the rest. There's nothing else to do now. Everything else now is formulas. That's it. That's all you got to do. No comping, no estimating repairs, no wondering if you're looking at the right type of comp, and none of that. We've dumbed it down. We've simplified this all the way down to just data. We're just going to go off of data. Well, now that we know what the current value is, the next step we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, well, if I'm going to sell this to a cash buyer, what exit number does a cash buyer want to be at? What discount would a cash buyer want to be at to buy this house? Because a cash buyer doesn't want to pay the as-is value. That would mean that they're not getting any kind of discount. There's no room for them to make money in the deal. They have to buy it at a discount off of the current value. So discounts are not all created equal because there's different price points. So look at this, guys, right now. What I've done here is if the as-is value is under 150 or between 150 and 200, well, let's go with the first one, under 150,000, then a cash buyer wants to buy at a 60% of value. They want to buy at 60% of the current value as the number a cash buyer would pay. So if they can get it, 40% off and they buy it at 60% of value, that's a deal. They're going to want it at that price. If it's between 150 and 200, they can pay a little bit more, right? Because it's all marginal. It's based on margins. So they can be at 65%. And if it's between 200 and 300, they can be at 70%, 300 to 400, 75%, 400 to 500, 80%. And if you're going over 500, you're going to need to figure out some kind of custom, formula. Maybe it's 85, maybe you keep it at 80, but this is going to cover the bulk of deals. Okay. So I want to make sure you're with me here. So now let's go back to our deal. Because we're at an average value on this example of 228, that falls between the 200 and 300 value range, which means our exit number is 70%. So what does that mean? That means if you look at 70% where that arrow's pointing, if you look at just to the right of that, that number is 160. So follow along with me, guys. Make sure you're grasping this with me. We've determined that the average value of this property, the as-is value of this property is 228. And we've also figured out that if a cash buyer were to buy this deal and they were to buy it at a discount, they would want to buy it at 70% of that value, which is 160,000. Now that's our cash buyer's number. That's not our number because we have to make money now as a wholesaler. We just now figured out though that our exit number, the exit number to a buyer is 160, which is 70% of the as-is value. Where did I get 70%? Because it falls in that range of 200 to 300. If that number was 350, then we'd be bumping that to 75% as an exit value. Okay, you with me? Guys, make sure you're with me. Leave a comment right now and say, Jerry, I'm following you along. This is third grade math. I get it. I don't even have to do the calculations because the formulas do it for me. But I want to make sure you're following me on the why we're doing this. Like the mechanics of it need to make sense to you so that you can grasp how to do this. Okay. So again, we're going to come up with a value by looking at data from Zillow, Realtor.com, and Redfin. That's an as-is value. Then we're going to figure out what the exit is. The exit is going to be based on the price range of the property because that percentage of discount is going to vary based on price point. So in this example, 70% is 160. Well, now we have to figure out, okay, well, what do I want to make as a wholesale fee? And again, if we look at our formula, the wholesale fee is also in correlation with the price. The higher the price, the more of an assignment fee I want to make. So my minimum is 20,000. Now you guys could change this. If you change this box in your calculator, like let's say lower, then it will recompute everything for you. I recommend you don't change it and you go with the numbers I go with because these are good numbers that will make sure you make money. It gives you some wiggle room too. But if it's under 150, really if it's under 200, then I want to make a $20,000 assignment. That's my goal. I want to go into the deal trying to make 20K if it's any deal under 200,000 in value. Now, maybe I don't quite get my number and I make 15, right? I'm okay with that, but I want to go into the deal and pencil it to make 20,000. If it's between 200 to 300, see the third box, then I want to try to make a $25,000 assignment. If it's a $300,000 to $400,000 house, I want to try to make 35,000 on my assignment. If it's between 400 and 500, I want to try to make 45,000. So I want to also adjust my assignment fee, my wholesale fee based on price point, just like we adjust our exit number on price point. Okay, so if I go back to our example here, because I'm falling in the 200 to 300 price points, I would be at a $25,000 assignment fee. That would be my goal, my desired profit. So again, the green cells calculate this for you. You don't have to do it yourself. It automatically does it because it's taking the numbers from the scale. See that scale box right there at the bottom? I've already built out my desired numbers. So then it will automatically compute everything for me. I've got down that I want to make 25,000 as my wholesale fee, which means my max buy price is, this is my formula, as is times 70% discount minus my wholesale fee equals my buy price. And if you look at that right there, that would be 135,000. So let's reverse engineer it. If I got this deal for 135,000, I would wholesale it for 25,000 to a cash buyer who would be paying 160, who would be buying it at a 70% discount off of its current value. Okay. And that would be a deal for somebody. They would look at that as a deal. Guys, leave a comment and tell me if this makes sense. Tell me if you think this formula is way easier to use. And guys, by the way, I've tested this against ARV formulas, and I've had lots of my students test it as well. I've got one of my students that flips, 5 to 10 deals a month. And they live and breathe off of this new formula. And they say most of the time when they compare it to ARV, they're getting to around the same number anyway, but it's way faster and way easier. Okay. So I feel confident that we've proven this and tested this, that this is a much faster, easier, better way to get to your number. And what's great about this is you literally could have your 10-year-old son or daughter could do the formula for you. You could teach them how to take an address, go on to Zillow, look for the the Zillow estimate, put it on this spreadsheet, do that with realtor.com and Redfin, and you're done. And then you come along and you have your offer price. Or you could be filling this out while you're on the phone with a seller. Like, it's that easy, that simple. No brain cells whatsoever to do this. Just inputting 3 data points. That's it. Who thinks that's cool? Leave a comment and say, Jerry, this offer calculator is way easier, way simpler, way cooler. I love it. I think you guys will really, really excel at this and really take the analysis part out of the equation. So when do we use this calculator? Let's talk about that for a minute. When do we use this calculator? Well, if it's an on-market deal, then we already know that the seller wants to sell because it's on market. So we don't need to uncover like, okay, do they want to sell? Well, all we need to do is say, okay, well, what would be a good number? What would be my offer number? So you want to run that calculator before making the offer. So here's how I like to do this, guys. Let's say that I find an on-market deal. I'm going to call the listing agent and I'm going to make an offer. So I text the agent, I find their phone number, I text them and I say, hey, I'm an investor interested in making a cash offer on your listing at 123 Main Street. Can I call you in 5 minutes to discuss? I do that for a couple of reasons. One, I text this. One is I make sure that it goes through. If it goes through, then I know I have their cell phone. One, it gives me a window of time now to go in and comp the property using my offer calculator. So then usually I'll get a response back that says, yeah, call me. Now, they're very interested in talking to you because you just said, I want to make a cash offer on your listing. So they're going to want to talk to you now. So you've also piqued their interest. Then what I do is I pull up the calculator, I go grab my 3 data points, I get to my number. And then when I get on the phone with them, now I'm ready to have an intelligent conversation, or at least now I have an offer price. Now I may pull it up and I may look at comps while I'm talking to them. Sometimes you'll see me do that if you guys watch me with agent calls. And that's just as I'm going, I'm on there with them. I'm looking at things. I'm talking to them about what's going on with value. But you sort of want to go into the call with a number in mind. Okay. Now, if it's off market, then you're going to now call those sellers. Well, you don't even know if they're interested in selling. So this looks a little different for off market. With off market, I won't even comp the properties. I'll basically call sellers. And basically it's this conversation of, hey, are you interested in selling? Oh, you are? Great. What number would you like for your property? And then now, once I have a seller that wants to sell, guess what I'm doing? I pull up my calculator. I'm talking to them on the phone, asking questions, but I'm inputting my data and I'm getting my offer number because literally I can do that in 90 seconds, right? I just got to go grab those 3 data points, put them in my calculator. Boom, I've got my number. So it's very simple to do. It's not a complicated process. You just want to do it in the right order. Okay, does that make sense? So on market, you're going to do it before you talk to the agent. Off market, you're going to do it after you discover that they want to sell, probably still while you're on the phone. If you haven't yet, you need to download that free offer calculator, and that needs to be your go-to now. What I recommend you do is create a duplicate tab and save one of those for each and every offer that you make. Every deal that you look at, save it as a new offer. That way you can come back to it later. We are actually building out that software tool into my CRM Flipster so that it will be built into the tool so you can just automatically save them. So our team's working on that. For now, it's the Excel spreadsheet because this is a brand new thing that we're doing. So make sure that you download that, save it, and make a new one every time. Because if a seller calls you back in 2 weeks or a month, you want to be able to pull that up, have the numbers, maybe you want to update it, but you have that in front of you to look at. So your assignment is to run the buy formula using that calculator, find 3 listed properties for sale right now in your market, and then do this analysis on your offer calculator and get to your offer number. If at some point you switch over to ARV analysis, that's totally fine. Here's typically what this looks like for me. I use this as is offer calculator to just get to my number. And then now that's my ballpark number. So then what I'll say to a seller is, or an agent is, whatever that number is, I'll probably go a little bit under that. Like if it's 135, I would probably say on this one, if I was talking to a seller or an agent, I would say, you know what, in the perfect world, I would be in the low 100s. I would need to be in the low 100s for this deal to work. And that's in the perfect world. If I could have my way with things, I would buy this in the low 100s. You know, another way of saying that, guys, is I would say something like, I'm sure you're getting offers from other investors in the low 100s. Is that right? Now, what did I just do? I sort of made an offer because I said low 100, but I didn't really make a concrete offer. I'm just putting a number out there as an anchor. So again, I would say low 100s on this one. Okay. When really I want to end at 135. See what I mean? How we anchor low. But when I anchor low, I've got to know where I want to land so that I can anchor below that, so that I can come up to the number I really want to be at, which in this example is 135. Okay, tell me if this is making sense, guys. Say, Jerry, I get the process here. The deal here is we're going to do some very simple analysis. We're going to come up with the price that will work for us based on an as-is value analysis. I'm going to anchor low, put that number in front of the seller, and see if I can settle at my desired max buy price. That's the process.